Good evening. I'd like to call our Budget and Finance Committee meeting to order at 6 o'clock here, and this is the evening that we meet with our large department heads to discuss various nuances of their upcoming budget. For those of you who are here, Sarah and Nicole and the sheriff and undersheriff, we have done a synoptic review of all the budgets on Thursday with Matt and Sean. So, we did get some introspection into each of your budgets, but certainly you're here to give us a little bit more detail. And I know each of the legislators from that evening, some of them have various questions they want to run by you within your budgets. So, Sarah, to start off, we have Sarah Barenko here, our Public and Mental Health Director, and we welcome you here this evening, Sarah. And we first, all of us, want to thank you for the fine job that you're doing managing our public health crisis in Montgomery County. Thank you very much for your extra effort, something I'm sure you weren't planning on when you put your budget together for 2020, that's for sure. A quick look at your budget on a synoptic basis of the two departments, each of them coming in for less money year over year. Public health, 21,000 plus less. Mental health almost break even with last year. So certainly we're pleased to see that. But I think all of us are interested to know, and especially in view of the circumstances that we're all going through now with the COVID pandemic, that you are properly equipped to encounter, what you may need to encounter going into 2021. Certainly did see a COVID grant as a big item that was different from year to year in your public health budget for $95,000, and I want to make sure, that you're happy with that. I know we have no control over that, but is it going to be enough to help you? And with that, why don't you fire away and tell us what you want to tell us about your budgets, and then we'll go around and see if any of the legislators would like to ask any questions.
Absolutely. So first of all, thank you for having me tonight. I was saying to Legislator Pep, this has been a unprecedented healthcare challenging year. From the public health crisis with COVID, it has impacted a number of programs. Our children with special health care needs, for 6 months we had children with disabilities not receiving services because there was no itinerant services, no speech, no OT, no PT. Those children were being served remotely, not in person as they had been. We know with schools being shut down, a number of our children and our mental health programs have been taking a hit with the numbers that they have the capacity to see. So it would be remiss for me to separate these into one talk because they really do go hand in hand. Everything that is impacting public health has impacted our mental health budget as well. So when we're talking about that cut, the state refuses to use the word cut at this point. They continue to say an extended withhold. So we are now in the fourth quarter, and that extended withhold for us is over $31,000 in mental health services. We are fortunate, though, because the way we manage our money in the mental health budget is we have the capacity to move funding from one provider to the next. So for those providers who are paid for home-based services, going into homes to provide children's services, they weren't billing for those services. So I have a bit of a reserve there that I can then supplant to other agencies and providers who are really struggling to provide clinic-based services and emergency services to our children who are struggling with substance abuse and mental health needs. So I feel confident with our mental health budget that our providers who do billing will be able to maintain the same integrity of services because of the fact that they have billable services now as a result of the pandemic built into their budgets for 2021. So that's mental health.
Okay.
And then on the public health side, we know that this is always the elephant in the room. Our children with special health care needs program, transportation is a huge cost of our county dollar. We typically have been able to reimburse for up to 60% average of our services. And now when we're being told that that is a 20% withhold That for us, as you can see, is relatively high. It's about $1 million of lost revenue that we will be able to recoup. What saved us this year was the fact that we did not have transportation costs for half of March straight through to July. Some transportation picked back up in August with parents providing parent transport, and some of our center-based services, parents were choosing to put their child on a bus and send them back to centers once they were up and running. So that did save us quite a bit of money on one hand, but those services and the detriment it has done to the children who now are not being served with speech, OT, PT, and special ed services, I think far outweighs the cost.
All set?
Yes.
All right, so I'll turn the floor over to my fellow legislators, see if there's any other questions anybody would like to ask or build upon from our session with the executive and the treasurer on Thursday.
Yes.
Legislator Chessie.
So just overall, looking at your budget, are there any particular line items that you feel are insufficiently funded? And conversely, do you think there are any line items that perhaps has excess money?
When we're looking at public health, I think the state really does us a disservice with what they allow us to spend money on. For example, in some of our programs, we are given a $15,000 advertising budget, and it can only be used for advertising those programs, but it can't be used to hire staff or to make up the difference for some staffing positions or even professional services that would assist us in getting things into the community. So unfortunately, our budget, the way it stands, the state dictates to me those grants, and I can't move the money and be as flexible as I would need to be. On our mental health budget, I think our big cost that is always a thorn in our side is our court-related expenses, which is 43204433. Court-related expenses are mandatory New York State forensic issues. So when we have a mental health client who has committed a crime as a result of the insanity plea, we at the county level have to fund that stay at the forensic psychiatric center at 100%. It was 50% this date. Now through all of this has turned 100% of that responsibility over to us. So as you can see from last year, we are running in the red on that line item because of the cost. It's about $32,000 a month for one inmate to remain in psychiatric care at the forensic facility.
I just wanted to give you an opportunity to speak to your budget with respect to if there are any areas perhaps that you thought could or should be changed.
I am very happy with my budget. I think it works well. When I look at the public health budget, obviously it is what it is. I can't change those grants. I can't move a ton of money around. But with mental health, it's very easy to switch some of the line items from provider to provider.
Thank you, Legislator Chessie. Legislator Thayer.
Yes. Sarah, how long have you been public health?
It was 3 years.
3 years, okay. Well, I took the liberty of going back and printing the appropriation and revenue reports for 17, 18, and 19. And 17, I believe you were not public health?
I was, April of 17.
Okay. Revenue, we realized 68%, appropriations 82%. 2018, revenue, we realized 85%, appropriated 99%. 2019, we realized 94% of revenues, appropriated 84%. So in my book, you're moving in the right direction.
Thank you.
The only thing that I have concern about is obviously if the state does claw back or confiscate, that's my word, 20% that they promise, where do you stand?
I think we're going to have to look at asking asking for funding from the general fund, unfortunately, because with our children with special health care needs program, that is a unfunded mandate at some level from the state. We are responsible for our 3 to 5 program at 100%, and with a 20% Medicaid cut and a 20% in what we can get reimbursed for transportation. I hate to say it, but it is what it is. We have to pay for it. You know, not providing children with disability services is not okay.
So off the top of your head, can you put a number?
4. No, unfortunately I can't. You know, this week alone we've taken, the week before, we took 9 referrals for new children. So if that is our average, that's not going to be good.
Obviously, this year, because of the year that it is, you've realized 39% of your revenues. And we've already expended 59% as of the end of September.
Correct.
So we're already behind the 8 ball for this year. And that could leave us a hole for next year at the end of this year.
Absolutely, and I'm very well aware of that. So we have scaled back a lot on some of our other programming, and really started to look at, as I said, when we're given $15,000 for a program to do advertising, which is a waste of money in my book, being able to shift those funds to other line items such as salary or actual programming and service needs is something we have been looking at with the state. Some of our programs, they've actually said they're not going to push back. Our OD2A grant, for example, with our opiates, they actually have said that they will let us for the rest of the year at Liberty use that funding for what we need it to instead of pigeonholing it into things that are really a waste. So I'm hopeful that we'll have the capacity to do that. And our reimbursements, we've changed our billing structure quite a bit in the past 2 years. My billing is now due on 5, 10, and 15. So my girls are not late with their billing anymore. It is all done within 15 days. So our service coordination and our Medicaid billing is done on the 5th. It's submitted to fiscal on the 10th, and my fiscal department submits it on the 15th of every month. So there's only a 15-day lag as opposed to previous years when there's been a 45 to 60-day lag.
What is our turnaround time to receive payment?
So I'm still waiting on some payments from 2018 from New York State. And the treasurer and I have had a number of conversations about that. And the state has even sent Sean and I a letter stating that if the state does not get into a better place, they will be cutting 20% of our 18 reimbursements as well. And we all know that COVID did not happen in 18, it happened in 2020. So I feel like we're being punished from 2018 and 19 when we were very much on top of what needed to happen.
Once again, because they can't do their job. My words. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
You're welcome, sir. Anybody else? Everybody good? Sarah, thank you for, again, doing a terrific job, making yourself available this evening to go through the gauntlet of questions.
Thank you.
And keep up the great work.
Thank you, John.
Nicole. Nicole, we have Nicole Yeagle here, our personnel officer, who we all are very familiar with. Nicole, our synoptic review of your budget the other evening showed that, not on the non-health, dental, and vision side of things, kind of a modest increase, just under $29,000 year over year. And on the health, dental, and vision side, because of an increase for projected claims, for the most part, a potential increase of about $96,000 year over year, which obviously far less than what I recall looking at your budget the last 4 years. We also understand some of the strategy involved in your compensation lines. That was well explained to us Thursday evening as to what is not in there and why, and we are prepared to address that from fund balance if and when it does occur throughout the year this year. But other than that, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you very much for having me tonight to discuss the budget that I'm responsible for. As you'll see, I handed out a packet, and generally I do hand out quite a packet. It's very large. I promise you I won't read the whole thing. So, in particular, I'd like to just acknowledge my staff that's worked very hard this year and has always worked hard, but in particular this year and the changes in the issues that we've had with the pandemic and the different obstacles that that creates. My staff has worked very well to make sure that the retirees as well as the employees continued to have their health insurance, to make sure that they had their prescriptions on time, to make sure that the employees of the county were paid, and that our departments were serviced correctly, and we were able to fill the essential staffing that was needed within the department. As far as my fund that we talked about, the A fund is largely the fund that is most pronounced here. We did talk about you talked about the other compensation, which I think is settled. I did want to point out that within the A fund, I have a decrease in our professional services line. That is that is my 4431. You'll see there that it's gone from $115,000 down to $85,000. I had originally asked for $115,000, but over the last year or so, probably the last 2 years, we've worked very hard with the departments to solve some of the labor matters that had been outstanding. And because of that, I didn't feel that we needed to build in that extra cushion to go over our retainer. And I believe as far as 2020 so far this year, we have not gone over our retainer. Does anybody have any questions in regards to that? Okay. Down under the fringe benefits, you'll also see some other increases that we discussed. The retirement line, which I believe that the treasurer discussed in his last meeting here, that is largely, that increase there is largely out of our control. It is based on previous year's payroll as well as the market. That number is given to us by the state, and so therefore we need to budget accordingly. You'll see in our unemployment insurance line, I did keep that steady, and in a few minutes I'll discuss with you a little bit about our unemployment. But first, would like to discuss with you the hospital medical lines. You'll see a slight increase in the hospital medical, and initially I had asked for $5.4 million. But since my initial request, some information has changed in regards to some of our high-cost claimant information, and I feel very comfortable with the number that I provided, that it ended up at.
Nicole?
Yep.
Just a quick question on that.
Sure.
End of year last year ended up at $4.4 million. And so far this year, you're about 70%, which is probably pretty normal, I would say. Why do you think there's a possibility of $1 million increase from last year to this year?
Well, we do have to, with the 8850, that's partially offset by employee contributions, but in also our cost claims for year over year, we take that into consideration, and also our high cost claimants.
Okay, so you're anticipating this year $1 million more than what we expect at the end of last year. So that's a.
I don't.
That's close to 20%.
Sure.
That's a 20% increase.
Right. So last year we budgeted $5.2 million.
But at the end of the year, unless there's something changed.
As far as the end of the year and how
At the
that
end of the year,
financially.
it's, all of the employee contributions are netted depending on which one the employees are attributed to. Last year, there was a considerable amount of the employee contributions that went back and reduced the actual expenses of the A fund.
So if you look a couple of slides further in your presentation, what I do is I provide you with the claim comparison year over year. It's a 7-year comparison. So you'll be able to see the actual claims data, which is not that data that I'm providing you there, which is small. I apologize, I didn't get you a bigger one. But the claims data that you see there has not been offset by employee contributions. That's actual claims data. Once it goes into the 8850 and the A fund, it is offset by those employee contributions.
So the 4.4 is not a real number for expenses because some of it's offset by employee
More of a
contributions.
net
Correct.
than a gross.
Okay. So do you know what that number, I'm just trying to compare what the total cost overall compared to what's coming in for this year.
So as far as the claims data, actual costs not taking into consideration employee contributions, we'll go with 2018, our totals for the A fund, just for the 8850 was about 6.3 million. For 2019, that was about just a little over $6 million. And right now, I'd say we're just, it's ebbing and flowing. We're still in the middle of this year. I think we're on track to be about the same.
Okay. When I saw a 20% increase, it just kind of stuck out in my head.
Yep, no, I understand. It does look a little deceiving, but the employee contributions do offset that amount.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome. Anyone?
Keep going.
Okay. We talked about the unemployment. Beginning of May, my office conducted a layoff with the employees of the county. There was approximately about 40 employees, both part-time and full-time, that were laid off. And for figures in regards to that, the salaries for those employees during that specific time period would have been approximately $266,000. During that same time period, we've paid, at this point, with the payments that we've made so far, we've paid a little over $99,000 in unemployment costs. That salary savings alone is about almost $167,000. Now, we are expected at some point to get a reimbursement from New York State in about 50% of what we've spent for unemployment. So once that is realized, and again, we're not sure how that will be realized, we're still working that out, our total savings from May 13th to approximately August 3rd, when the vast majority of people return, is about $216,000. So I just
Good
wanted
move.
to point that out.
It was a well contemplated and smart move at the time.
Does anybody have any questions about the unemployment? You'll see that in that line, I remained at $75,000. Hopefully you will not have to realize that. The next fund that we talked about is our health insurance lines. My office has worked very hard with MVP and with the employees of the county as well as the union to work on ways in which we can try to save some money in the health insurance lines. A lot of it is out of our control as we're self-funded, but we can work on different ways to promote cost savings, such as online health that we talked about in previous years. The online health has really taken off, and I think unintended positive from COVID has forced people to actually get familiar, at least some people familiar with the process of using online health. When we originally started our wellness committee, we had no one signed up for online health. And I'm proud to say today we have over 80 people signed up for online health. This year alone, we've had 33 people actually use it, which is a big difference in previous years, but the cost savings of that is tremendous. So if we have those individuals use the online health for non-emergent reasons versus going to the ER, which is what's happened in the past, our cost savings just on 33 visits is approximately $40,000. It's a big difference. So the more we get people familiar with online health and the use for non-emergent, the more we divert them away from the ER, the more cost savings we can realize. The other cost saving measures is that we did negotiate with our largest union. We did increase our ER copay, which is the first increase of ER copay in decades. It went from $50, we're currently at $150 for the vast majority of the employees in our CSCA union. I believe that that also helps to deter non-emergent visits. Now, looking at the data that I looked at with MVP. Now, again, it's a little bit deceiving because we are in the middle of a pandemic. But at this point last year, our ER visits for non-emergent reasons were 44% of our total and overall use of the ER, our spend. At this point, we're down to 24% of those visits attributed to our spend. So I think we're moving in the right direction as far as that is concerned. The other ways that we're looking at, we're always looking at ways to save money. One of the other cost saving measures we looked at was expanding our international pharmacy to make injectables and certain medications available to individuals. So for the individuals that do have those prescriptions, it'll go to a $0 copay for those individuals, but the savings for the county is also pretty remarkable. We have, in looking at the data that we have in certain medications claims that we have, in a 6-month period, we had about 131 claims that were eligible under this expansion. For those particular claims, those claims will now save the county in a 6-month period just under $101,000. So over just about $202,000 for the year that we can anticipate in the future. And hopefully, we will expand that even further. But we've been working very closely with our pharmacy benefit manager to explore other options as far as savings. I did discuss already the wellness initiatives, and we'll continue to look for other ways. We've had the most successful benefit fair that we've ever had last year, and unfortunately this year we're going to have to find some alternatives for our benefit fairs. Just because of not being able to get everybody together. But we are going to continue and have an employee flu clinic. We are going to continue with our biometric screenings. Those are being set up at this point. And really, they've actually brought to attention to some of our employees some issues that they were able to address with their primary care physicians. And of course, prevention is always the best measure for the employee as well as the savings for the county. And does anybody have any questions regarding the health insurance fund?
Let's start there.
Yep.
Thank you, Chair. Retirees.
Yeah.
Do we have a breakout of what the cost is for just retirees?
I do not have that with me tonight, but I can certainly provide that to you.
Okay. I know that in the past, Medicare Advantage was made available.
Yes, it was.
And then it was changed back.
It's still Medicare Advantage plan.
Is it Medicare
Absolutely,
Advantage?
absolutely. Okay. All we did in 2019, our previous benefits through our other carrier had proposed a 24% increase, about a 24% increase to our retirees, of course, our most vulnerable population. At that point, I didn't feel, along with the executives, did not feel that that was an appropriate increase, and so we decided to shop at that point for our retirees and for the county's sake. We ended up going with Humana, and to this point, we are still with Humana, and Humana has served our retiree population wonderfully. And in fact, in the last 2 years, we have seen a decrease in our premiums. We're fully insured for the retirees over 65, so over the last 2 years, we've seen a decrease in the premiums on our medical side with Humana. So they continue to work with us. They've provided wonderful concierge service with any issues we may arise with, but we've seen a decrease with them.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
You're welcome, sir. Do you want to keep going, Nicole?
Unless you have questions, I'm almost done, I
Yeah,
promise.
no, that's fine, I mean, this is fine the way this is working, and we're well around something, people have questions, but I just didn't want to cut you off if you had more. Go ahead.
I appreciate it. Now, the last fund in my responsibilities is our workers' compensation fund. And it's a fund that we've previously spoke about in other budget meetings. We do claims reviews regularly. This year is a little bit different just because of COVID. We're not able to get together, but we do speak on the phone in regards to the data. I'm in continuous contact with Triad, our TPA, and working on managing claims, conducting investigations on fraudulent or suspected fraudulent claims, as well as going to hearings myself. As you know, the towns, the villages, our city of Amsterdam, with the exception of APD, is all in our workers' compensation fund. Largely, the county and the city our highest loss leaders, and that, for the most part, is due to our payroll. Our payroll size for the county as well as the city of Amsterdam is the highest in the plan. So it would be expected that our losses would occur there. Our budget overall is only seeing a small increase. I've taken into consideration scheduled losses of use that are expected over the next year and that are from injuries that occurred a year ago. So we have taken those into consideration and built that into our assessments, our budget overall, and so we're only seeing a small increase there. We have, while I've talked about updating our workers' compensation local law, that is something that we're still working on, something that it's still something that we need to do. But in the meantime, we've worked in ways in my department to make the process more transparent. We've created more efficiencies in the department, and I believe that once we are able to move forward with the local law, I think that will bring more trust and further transparency to the process. I plan on working with the city of Amsterdam, the county. I spoke with Madagascar in the past, and working out ways to increase or improve safety programs. I think that prevention is probably one of the most important ways in which we can save money in our workers' compensation fund. And I've spoken with him in regards to doing that, as well as I've talked with our DPW commissioner and working with his office to also make improvements in safety. Okay. Do you have any questions in regards?
Everybody all set with the personnel presentation? Thank you. Legislator Kelly.
Back to the A fund with tuition reimbursements. In a 4-year average, we've spent under $1,000.
Correct.
Are we planning on sending people for training?
Well, the training money would not really come out of that. This is for individuals who are working for the county that are improving their education and going to a local college. So it's really up to the employees. The training would come out of a different line. But if an employee is engaging in college, that's where that money would come from. So we are required to keep money in there for our union contracts, and it just depends on whether individuals are taking advantage of it.
Okay. 4439, other service fees.
Okay. That contract. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No. Go ahead.
So that was primarily our Chronos upgrade. So we upgraded our time and attendance system from our AS400 to a web-based program, and that's currently still in progress. I believe that in the next year that will fall off to maintenance agreements, and we'll see a decrease in that money next year. A significant decrease.
Okay. So the last 2 years, we've spent about $61,000 in that line.
Okay.
Are we expecting an increase in that?
No.
So that's an area where we could drop it a little bit?
I suppose.
I still don't understand the medical insurance.
Okay.
In the A fund. So 4-year average, it's 4.5 million what we spent. This year, up to September, if we were to extrapolate it, we're looking at 4.8 for this year. If, who knows, it's all throwing pasta at the wall. But it still seems, if we stay on track with what we're spending now, it's still less than what we budgeted for the 2020 budget. So do we need to increase that line?
I think that the employee contributions, and Sean, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that the employee contributions will help offset that. In 2019, I think is when we settled the CSEA contract, and we also changed the premium contributions for non-bargaining employees. So they went up to 20% for new hires, as well as, so I believe that with the revenue that we'll see.
And where does that revenue show up?
That revenue shows up in the M fund. Under employee contributions, it is the, hold on, it would be the 2709.
It's there.
And you'll see an increase in the revenue in that line for this year as well.
So then in the A fund, that's actually what we spent after the contribution?
Correct. That's off, with the offset
With
for
the
the
offset.
employee.
So total minus employee, that's the number.
Employee contributions, I mean, if you go off 2019, about $1.5 million, right? I mean, Brian said we had a net figure of about 4.4. The actual, expense was 6.1 million, right? With 8850.
They get charged back against more than just the general fund. They go back against the county road machinery and sewer fund as well.
So the D, the G, the DM all feed into,
Okay.
we charge out to the A, the D, the DM, and the G, and they all feed the M fund into that. So you'll see up in the participant assessments, up in the 2222, you'll see funds as well as the employee contributions, and so they all funnel into the M fund.
All right.
So the A fund, hospital and medical, that's strictly what the A fund liability is.
That would be the A fund line. To the best of our ability, people come,
Right.
people go.
Right.
People are on our insurance and off of our insurance.
All set, first, third, Cody?
I have one more question.
Okay, no, it
Unemployment.
looked like you were set, that's all.
Do we really think the state is going to offset our, with that 50%?
I do.
I'm hearing grumblings.
Well, so far, that's what we've heard, and
Okay.
that's what we've heard, that's what we've been told throughout my Personnel Officers Association meetings. They've been told the same. It's just how we're going to get them.
Because I know in the private sector, it wasn't supposed to hit their rates, but now it looks like it's going to end up hitting the employer's rates. And I know that we're self-insured, so it's apples and oranges, but.
Even without that reimbursement, we've still saved about $166,000 during the layoff.
That's all I got.
But I do anticipate it.
Doesn't matter, not only of how, when, right?
Yes.
Okay. Legislator Thayer, yes.
Question on the FICA. Obviously, this is more for this year than for next year. You have personnel that have been in layoff and are collecting unemployment, so we're not paying their FICA. Can those monies be utilized to pay a portion, the increased portion of unemployment? Can we roll that over? So there'll be enough money in that to take care of that line?
That would be, Sean, if you can assist with that. I mean, as far as the unemployment being, you're talking about the unemployment being over at this point this year?
Well, your line is going to go over.
It is.
And so the FICA is not being utilized this year because of the layoff. They're not having FICA paid out.
The other
And the
option,
percentage is lower on the FICA than the unemployment.
right, the other option would be, sorry, Sean.
Go ahead.
The other option would be is in those specific lines where people were laid off, we can use the money that are in those, the excess money in those lines to help offset the money in the unemployment lines. It's just a matter of whether need to move forward with a resolution to take the money from those lines, which I'm prepared to do, to help pay for
I hope
that.
that we're in the conserving mode
Yeah.
because it looks like next year we're going to be leaning heavily on fund balance. So wherever we can utilize money that's within the budget and not take it and just, don't take offense, but spend it frivolously. And I'm not saying that any are, it's a poor choice of words, but it's the one that I have to know. But if we can utilize the monies that are already within the budget and conserve and try to maintain fund balance or increase fund balance, that's definitely going to help us for next year.
I believe we'll have the money within the budget, but my recommendation would be, and was in the past, is to take the monies out of the particular lines that were laid off and use that to offset it if it's needed.
Thank you.
Thank you, Legislator Thayer. Good question. And good point. Any other questions? Upon hearing none, Nicole, thank you once again for making yourself available this evening
Thank you.
and for all the hard work that you do. And, you know, I'm looking at all the departments we have come in here, and it's just amazing, you know, how many have been directly affected by COVID. I mean, Sarah, the most directly, obviously, but you've been affected. I mean, the sheriff, social services, and, I mean, maybe not so much DPW, you know, because they came in business as usual, but it's just amazing the ripple effect it has throughout the budget.
Absolutely. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, our third department before us this evening is the sheriff and jail, and led, of course, by Sheriff Jeff Smith and Under Sheriff Carl Rust, who are with us here this evening. And Jeff, you know, again, I'll just give the brief overview. You know, we saw, you know, a year-over-year increase on the executive and treasurer's synopsis here, just under 150,000. But a lot of it for 171,000 for contractual salary increases that had the biggest impact on that increase. But from there, why don't you take the floor and give us further insight into your budget.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much for the opportunity tonight and for all your work on the 2021 budget. I also want to thank the treasurer and the county executive. I enjoy the candid conversations when it comes to budgeting. And, you know, knowing where we stand means a lot to us and our agency. So with that said, the men and women have worked extremely hard. And when the undersheriff and I work on a budget, we try to present a budget that we believe is realistic. This year has been very unique for us. I think we have the ability to possibly, and of course, who knows what's going to happen in the next 3 months, but possibly turn back in a couple $100,000, which would help the fund balance in the end. Normally, we don't like to do that because that's irresponsible budgeting, but there has been some things this year that have affected us negatively. We were very happy with our budget. We're having a great year with our revenue for the correctional facility. Men and women in the jail are working extremely hard, even throughout COVID, and we continue to take federal inmates. Today, as we sit here, there's 30 of them. So, $120 a day, you can do the math, it makes a big difference. I sent out an email to all the legislature last week. If things continue to go well, the remainder of this year, we will come close to reaching $1 million in revenue. And I believe we had 475 budgeted for 2020. So, you know, we're very happy with that. Our expenditures, if you look at the revenue that we brought in compared to the expenditures minus personnel, they're almost a complete wash, which I think is very impressive. I mean, yes, our agency is one of the only agencies that has the ability to bring in revenue, so that certainly is not the fault of any other department head. We're just lucky in that aspect. But we're also proud of the work that we do because, as we know, we could sit there and not bring that revenue or not work as hard to offset those appropriations. No surprises on the patrol side. Civil side, or the 911 dispatch center, to be honest with you. I think I would defer and open up to questions from the legislature, but we're happy the way things are going. You know, we've done a good job. I would like, at the end, have a little negotiation session on a couple of lines, but that's just for feedback and see how you feel about it at the end.
Well, I can say this, we were, a little surprised when we saw, we knew what kind of pace you were on, and we saw what got, budgeted for the federal prisoners, but the treasurer and the executive explained, some of the strategy behind that, their strategy, but Legislator Patel?
Sheriff, thanks for coming. Thank you, Carl. How is bail reform affecting the population in the jail and the cost? Have we seen any cost savings for that?
Yeah, if you look in the jail side budget, there are decreases in our medical lines and our food lines for inmates. So it has decreased the inmate population for 2020. Our concern was, if you remember last year, I told you I was afraid to change budgets drastically for a couple of years to see how it affected us. Our fear is that people who get arrested now that aren't coming to jail on bail now, eventually the count will catch up as they get sentenced for these cases, and they may come to jail in the end. Years ago, they used to come to jail on bail, and all that time counted towards their sentence. So when they got sentenced, they technically were released with time served. Now they haven't served a day, so if they get any sentence in the court system, they will be coming to us as a sentence inmate in comparison to a pre-sentence inmate. So the count is down. I did the numbers before I came over today to make sure I had them. We have 52 county inmates as of today, 30 feds, and 2 New York State parole for a total of 84. So we are down, but not drastically down. We are starting to see some inmates come back into the facility now sentenced as we suspected. So we're probably a year away yet to know the true effect of it. Maybe the 2022 budget will have a real good answer, I would hope.
So you're just seeing a shift?
We're seeing a shift of when they come in, yes. That's what it appears to be, and that's what our thought process was. It's a little too early to say for sure if the count is going to go up with sentence inmates or not. The courts were closed for 5 months as well, so court cases are truly just really getting into action, which will certainly have an effect on our count also.
We'll see some savings this year, but it's going to
Potentially not, correct.
Thank you.
Legislator Sweet.
Thank you, gentlemen, for coming this evening. Just got a couple questions. In the revenue line 3389, it's E91 public safety. There isn't anything budgeted for this year, but as of the end of September, but we did amend the budget to $594,000. You want to explain that just a little bit?
Yeah, so when we took office, there were 2 state interoperable communication grants sitting waiting for action. And if we didn't take action immediately, we were in jeopardy of losing them. So we did, and with the treasurer's help and support, we put it in the appropriate line, and there was expenditures to match. Those are grants that have 0 match funds. They're 100% grant funds. And we have one coming up this year as well for $383,000. And we will do a resolution in January to realize that, increase the revenue, and increase the expenditure to match. The reason we wait till January is because those projects are a little bit longer. And if we do the resolution and accept the grant money in September or early October when we get the notice, it's hard to finish them by January 1st. So carrying all that money over in fiscal closing, we just sit on it till January, and that gives us the whole calendar year to get it accomplished.
Very good. I'm glad to see that you're able to utilize that money. Next question that I have is under appropriations. It's line 3020 4459 is computer software. You budgeted $83,000, and again, I believe this is another grant that was realized.
Correct. Yeah, so we're supposed to get PSET grant money every year. That's Public Safety Answering Point. Again, same situation Sarah Bragan was in with the state. We haven't received word on our PSET money, and that money comes directly from the surcharges that everyone here pays in their phone bills and cell phones. So there is organizations, New York State Sheriffs, Emergency Management Associations, 911 Coordinator Associations that have written letters to the governor's office to find out what's going on with that, because it's really earmarked by law to be provided to the counties to manage the 911 centers. So as soon as we hear from them, we also will have follow-up resolution.
And one last thing, is your overtime line, 1214. Year to date, well, it was amended to 250,000 year to date, you're at 70, almost 79,000. I'm assuming because of, is that mostly jail?
That's in the jail 3150?
Right.
Yes. So we are down with expenditures this year for that line, but there's multiple reasons why, I can explain. If you look at what we spent in 19, we actually increased that to 269, 276. So we're down for multiple reasons. The inmate count is down, which helps, which means less transports to and from court. The courts were closed. A lot of those end up causing overtime. We weren't able to train any officers because academies were closed. We now have 5 in the Saratoga County Academy, which causes 5 people out of the facility. So we backfill a lot with overtime. We also have, the overtime also is fluctuates based on full-time staff and the ability to cover vacation time, holiday time, and this is something that we've talked about, Nicole, even with the county executive. I don't think there's an official ruling yet, but there's a lot of officers that did not take time off because they couldn't go anyplace. So we're getting in a situation where we've got a lot of officers with a lot of time that normally we would pay throughout the year because we have the minimum staffing. So we kind of talked about potential maybe allowing them to carry it over a little farther, but I assume that's conversations we'll have to have as we move forward. So all of those reasons combined have caused a decrease in spending this year.
Okay.
You know, as I said here, could we lower that line? Maybe a little bit. You know, I'd be willing to do that, and that's part of my negotiation process when we're done. But, you know, if everything is a typical year for the jail, I also don't want to go too low because I would be concerned about not making it.
Okay, thank you. One other thing, I believe you originally requested 3 vehicles, 3 cars?
I did. I believe I put in for $100,000 total in that line.
Why not, is that just motor vehicle line?
Yeah, it's the motor vehicle line on the patrol side, which is 3110, 2230.
Yeah.
So that was part of my negotiation process, and I would explain. If you want me to do it now, I will.
Well, I mean, so that basically looks like you got back, knocked down to 1 or 2?
Yeah, that's one.
That's 1?
It's almost one.
Okay.
So we've done a very good job, and that's thanks to you and these two gentlemen over here catching up our equipment, our patrol vehicles. I put in for 3, in all honesty, in hopes of getting 2. That's kind of the game, the budget game that you play. I'm not going to lie about it. I would like to get a marked vehicle and an unmarked vehicle. One of the unmarked vehicles that we use for all of our training to go to these academies, there's 5 right now going to Saratoga every day. There's 3 going to Zone 5 in Schenectady every day. Had to be towed off of 67 in Saratoga County to DPW. It's an 06. Still working. DPW put a couple Band-Aids on it. It's back out there. But I would like to get the new sergeant for the investigations unit an unmarked car and move his car up to the training fleet so that we can continue. And the reason they have to take an unmarked car to training is because they're not weapon certified yet. They don't wear a weapon to and from, so we don't want to put them in a marked vehicle that could put them in a position where people think that they're able to take action. The other thing is the patrol car is just to replace one of our aging vehicles. I truly believe that we need to get 1 or 2 a year consistently to stay on top of the fleet and fleet management. If we get 1, which is already in the budget, we'll be in good shape. Our fleet is in probably the best shape it's been in a long time. And I'm thankful for your support for that. Yes, sir.
Sean, Matt, I know when we first came about the legislature, we started doing a 3 every year. We were buying like 3. Can you tell me how many we've bought and the year, like 2014, 2015, how many?
I believe that did you supply a list of the vehicles?
I did supply a
I
list.
believe in the backup documentation that the sheriff had, has a complete list of his vehicles.
There is.
His inventory.
So my negotiation for the vehicles was, and hear me out, maybe this will make it easier. or not. When I put in for the jail revenue, I was very conservative, because although we've had an awesome year, that plug could be pulled at any point in time. Like, we don't control that plug. You know, if the feds call and say, we're not bringing you any more inmates tomorrow, they're gone, and there's really nothing we can do other than beg. So I expected the treasurer and the county executive to probably put the revenue at the same level that it was last year, and they went under at 25,000, which I understand and I respect that. But I would be willing, if you guys agreed, to put that up to 500 in hopes that we can reach half of what we're reaching this year. You know, again, I don't know if we can, but I'd certainly give it the effort, try, and do the best that we can. And then I wanted to, so that would be $50,000 in revenue. Then I was hopeful that in line 3020, 1120, which is dispatcher part-time, I requested 70, they dropped it down to 55. I was hoping we could move that up to 60. In the motor vehicle line, we would add another $33,500. That would make us have 2 vehicles completely. The sheriff's deputy part-time line was reduced from 70 to 60. I was hopeful we could push that to 65. And then I would be willing to decrease the jail overtime line by 15,000. If we did all that, it would still be a net gain for the county and reduce my expenditures.
You're saying increase the jail facility, the federal prisoner revenue up to 5?
Right.
And offset it with those 3.
And decrease the jail overtime line by 15,000.
Let's look at just.
Yeah, I wasn't making note of all those changes.
Okay.
Well, I plan on supporting them, and let me tell you why. Yours is a unique position, in many ways. You were elected, and I've seen in the past when things went sideways to the department, and we just get the bill, and there's not a lot we can do about it. I've also seen when there's been no initiative to increase revenues in the jail where the opportunity afforded itself. And I'm very proud of the job you've done here. You've demonstrated professionalism every step of the way here. If you summarize those changes, I will support them in the form of a resolution.
Thank you, sir. So just when is that for October? When should I create that?
If you could send an email like tomorrow,
I
so
will
that I
do so.
can make sure that we can put that on for our changes.
Yes.
Legislator Patel, I saw that hand first.
You know, is there any reason why we couldn't buy 2 cars out of this year's budget with the excess in the inmates?
Well, we could do that also and zero that line out for next year's budget if that's.
We've actually done that in previous years.
I mean, that would take $70,000 out of the budget.
But I do believe that you have some other projects you'd like to do.
There's a resolution on for a public safety meeting for kitchen equipment. That's 83 of them. Even if you did that, we would still be way over the projection.
It is important we make the numbers work because you know we're up against tax caps and such. Sure. So if you're demonstrating revenues and expenses to balance, then I think there would be some support for that.
For this year. Budget, take it out of the revenues for this year.
Okay, well, that's the email I'll send tomorrow then instead. Because that would decrease the budget line as it is. Would be less expenditures. And then are we going to keep the revenue the same as budgeted then for the jail?
For next year?
For next year.
Well, it sounded like you had a couple other things, though, you wanted to cover with it. Other than the
Yeah,
car.
they're minimal minus the car. That was like 15,000.
Okay.
I'm thinking we take those 2 heavies out of next year. Put them in this year because of your revenue this year. And then gain $70,000
Next year.
next year. No?
Legislator Kelly.
I'm okay with buying 2 cars this year. I would still leave 1 car in there so that we're still at least buying 1 vehicle each year to keep the fleet somewhat current. But back to the gas line in road patrol. So it seems we've never actually hit what we've budgeted in the fuel line. Is that an area where we could make some adjustments?
Well, they reduced, I requested 70, they reduced it to 65. We can make any adjustments you want, it's all contingent on the prices of gas.
I understand that, but in 19 we did 70 and we only did 54. We did 80 and 18 and only did about 52.
If you look at those 19 numbers, you're not all that far away if the price per gallon changes a lot.
Right, and
In 18, I can't speak for, I wasn't here, didn't have you.
it was just under $3 a gallon in 18.
I'm okay.
I'm not saying hack it half, but
I'll always try to stay within budget and or if need be, do some transfers if I can to make it work. But
And you have been, you've demonstrated that.
then I had one in the 3150 line. Maintenance agreements, 4422, 4425.
yes,
Is that a contract or?
I gotta do the sheet up.
227. No, I'm just telling them the number. I thought maybe it would ring a bell when I told them.
It's DPW, it's Rico copiers, and it's vehicle maintenance.
For 7,000?
4422?
25, sorry.
Oh, 25, I'm sorry. It's biometrics, which is the maintenance contract on our electronic fingerprint machine for all bookings.
Mhm.
And then it's also SHI, which is a vendor that they purchase things occasionally out of for the gym.
So that, as of September of this year, we've spent $4,700.
Yeah, and I apologize, I don't have the exact date of when that maintenance contract gets paid,
Okay.
so it may be coming yet.
Well,
I can get
because
that tomorrow.
in 2019 at September, it was 4,400, and that was the total amount that was actually spent out of that line in 19. So I'm thinking that
Okay, we made pages already?
yeah.
Yep.
So is there going to be an increase, and that's why we need 7,000 in that line? Or-
No, I believe we put 7,000 because occasionally we buy stuff through SHI for the jail out of that line.
Okay.
So, that's not an every year thing. Unfortunately, we never know for sure what we have to purchase when things break, so I think we try to put some in there to make sure we have it covered if we need it.
Mhm. But if we were to make, and I still believe we need to keep at least one vehicle in next year's budget because of cycling. But if we were to make some reductions to the gas and fuel and a little reduction there, that would help increase to hopefully offset the partial car that you said that line covers.
Sure. Yeah, I understand that. I mean, again, same thing, Legislator Kelly, if I ran short for some reason, I would do everything I could to make it work.
What did you say we were at year-to-date for gas?
For gas?
But you talked about the patrol side gas, not the
Yeah,
jail.
patrol, yeah. What's that?
What?
3110.
Patrol gas is 3110, 4441,
Yeah,
yes.
31,250.
So right now, is it 95%? You got 31,250 expended, 30,749 probably.
Yeah.
So we got 3,000 left.
I believe there's quite a bit left in that obligation though.
Oh, is there?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah, that obligated is just to make it easier to pay
gotcha.
that bill on a monthly basis.
All right, thank you.
Is that legislator code?
But I am in favor of buying the two vehicles out of the increase in revenue that we've had, but
This year.
yes, this year, 2020, but I still think that we need to leave at least one vehicle in 2021, so that we're not 5 years down the road looking at, oh, we haven't improved our fleet.
What does everybody, I mean, since Sheriff Smith's gonna send this information over to the clerk, what is everybody's consensus
Can
on?
we just wait until we're pretty much wrapped up and then talk about that?
Sure. I just thought while we were on the subject, but Legislator Headway, you did have a question.
Yeah, well, I'm glad you made the comment that you never know when things break. I mean, you've got air conditioning units, I mean, up on your roof, your building's used 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, it never has any downtime. And I do appreciate all the revenue that you keep bringing in, and I did bring up last week that I thought we should have some kind of a capital reserve fund in your budget. And my thought is that some of the excess money that you get from boarding prisoners, and again, you never know when that's gonna stop, that we take some of that money and put that aside. So that if one of those units break, you're not coming here and saying we need to take $400,000 out of the fund balance to do it. I've got already $200,000 in this fund. So I would prefer that we do what you first suggested with the cars and buy it and use some of the extra funds from this year's budget to put in the capital reserve, so that we start having a capital reserve. And then, and the same thing next year, we look at how much money you brought in from boarding, and if there's any extra, put that in that fund. So your kitchen supplies and your other things that you're looking at, that could be big money things that would be used out of that fund.
Yeah, I actually plan on staying for Eric's session, because if you talk about the capital project, there are some things that we really need to talk about in the jail. You'll have a resolution on public safety next week pertaining to some of those, and that's kitchen equipment, but there's other things.
But I know you have problems with the showers and the gym. I mean, there's a tons of lists of things to be done, and I think we're not doing what we really need to do. We're not looking far ahead, because these things are gonna come back and get us. I mean, the school districts every so many years have capital projects, and they put millions of dollars into the facilities, and that facility up there is 20 years old. And we just keep putting Band-Aids on it, and eventually it's gonna come back, and it's gonna get us. If we don't start thinking about a capital reserve fund, we're gonna be in trouble.
Yes, Legislator Hadwell did bring that up last week, and obviously then it does come into play if we're talking about moving money around here for cars and whatnot.
Chair.
Legislator Sweet.
In regards to that, maybe you can answer something. If we set up a capital reserve fund, will that limit what we're able to use that money for? I hate to see, just use $250,000 going to that fund, and he doesn't need to use it for anything, so it's now sitting there. Could it be set up so that it's able to be used for something other than capital projects? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I just hate to see a pool of money sitting. I think it's a good idea to get some money set aside, but will it hamstring that money?
They can, and what I would suggest is I work with Sean and we come up with a suggestion and see what different alternatives we can look into for that.
But I will elaborate on that. If you do set up a capital reserve, it has to be for a capital expense.
Right, you can't use it for overtime, you can't use it for
Right.
gas, it's gonna be
Correct.
something that is, there's a lot of things that have to happen up there, but I think we need to be kind of cognizant of how much money we set in that account.
And then my thought was, even last week when I brought this up, was that we weren't gonna say every year we're gonna put $250,000 away. It's what we can afford to put in it, but when Jeff had that unit up there and the roof blow up, I mean, it was like, oh my God, how are we gonna pay for this thing? Except take the money out of fund balance, or the following year we're gonna bond for them and do other things. And the same thing, you never know when something big's gonna go up there. And if we put 100,000 this year, 200,000, and if you have a really good year, and again, this is up to the sheriff and the executive and whoever to say, this is how much money should be going back in the general fund, and this is how much money we think we should put in the capital fund. I don't want to make that decision. That should be, because Jeff knows exactly what he's looking at doing up there in the jail. I know he's thinking 5-6 years ahead of what needs to be done.
I like the idea of reserves. My question is there a difference between having it in restricted funds and reserves or having it in fund balance when, it's all our money, right? I like the idea. It's the county's money. I'm not sure that, again, I agree, I'd love to have reserves for just the jail, but is there a difference when it comes down to it, whether we save it in fund balance and spend it, or we have a restricted fund for the jail where we can only use it for a roof or a heating unit or whatever?
I think people on the outside would look at it and say, look, they're planning. They have a savings account planned for that kind of stuff versus, oh my God, look how much money, look what they just did in fund balance. They just deleted it by $250,000 or $500,000. what were they thinking? How come they didn't have something, planned? I mean, people do it for their own homes, they have money set aside, I mean,
I
we just spend.
don't disagree with the reserve.
All right, well, I guess we're at a point then where we need to make a decision collectively so that the sheriff knows what move to make in sending the information over to our clerk regarding a resolution and vehicles and a couple other shifts you were talking about. So,
So if I may,
Yeah.
I'll send an email with both options. And then, or do you need to make a decision tonight?
no, we don't need to make a decision tonight, but I mean, I like legislators as well as idea as well, but we're not in a position as we sit here today to quantify how much until it settles into the year-end balance sheet, which we're not going to see until, mid-year, 3/4 of the year next year. The earliest we'd see it is in an odd by the end of April. And maybe that's a time, when we see if you have extra, revenue off of our odd, that we can make a shift and move an amount of money into a reserve fund then, based on the results of 2020. Because that's really what it's predicated upon. What he's talking about is, let's see how we finish the year. If you finish 200,000, 300,000, 400,000, over your budget, maybe we can, take an arbitrary amount every year and put it in there, and we can decide on how much we want it to be at that particular point in time when we're able to quantify it. I mean, I'm just thinking out loud like the rest of you, as these ideas are being bantered about. So,
Mr. Chairman,
yes, legislative adjustment.
I'd like to see the adjustment simply made on a comfortable addition to the revenue line item, just to meet those immediate needs that the sheriff has presented. That's clean in and out, and then I think that there's plenty of time to make those other adjustments if the dollars come in.
I think you're right.
Certainly something I would support.
I think you're right.
I support that.
Everybody okay with that? All right, so Sheriff, you've got the directive here.
Yes, sir.
Feel free to send the clerk the proposed shifts that you spoke about in your revenue and expense line items regarding the vehicles. Now, are we settling on 1 or 2 cars? I guess that's the other item that we need to discuss, because Legislator Sweet brings up a good point. The money's there to get 2, but it's probably not a bad idea to make sure we at least get 1 new one every year so we have a recycled fleet.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
let's hear the sheriff's rationale for 2 cars as opposed to 1.
The reason I asked for 2 is I would like to buy 1 marked and 1 unmarked. The unmarked would go to the newly appointed sergeant in charge of the investigation unit, and his current vehicle would be broken down to the training vehicle. It would replace the one that we've had to repair frequently and recently towed. The marked car would replace an older Chevy that we have, and I don't have the year memorized, but I could look it up, that just keep our fleet newer. Our current set of Ford vehicles are now approaching 150 to 175,000 miles. And it only takes about a year for that to hit 200,000. And once we get to 200,000 miles, to me, a police vehicle starts to get concerning. We've run vehicles here in this county, sometimes 300 and more, and I don't believe that that's a good practice. I mean, thankfully, we've dodged, major incidents and accidents, but I don't want to put the men and women that work very hard to protect our constituents and us each and every day in that position. So I'm trying to manage a fleet, and by getting 1 patrol car or 2, depending on the year, it keeps us away from that dangerous situation.
So you're an advocate. So what we were talking about, we already had 1 in the budget. We were talking about adding the unmarked and another. We were talking about putting all 3 back in.
Right, that was Legislator Kelly's suggestion.
No, Legislator Kelly I think that patrol and unmarked, and then another patrol next year.
The current budget we're in, 2020, being
Yeah.
the revenues are higher, I would
Yeah.
say purchase 2 this year.
Okay.
And leave at least 1 in the budget
Perfect.
for 2021 because we want to keep
All right, everybody good with
rotating the
that?
fleet.
I agree.
Let's
I have
have
a twist on that.
Uh-oh.
I mean, if we take and purchase 2 cars before December 31st this year out of the revenues, and we eliminate the expense that's in the budget of $33,000, we can always come back next October or whatever and say, look, we're doing well again in the jail. So let's appropriate another $30,000 through a car. I think 2 cars will bring us up to date, and if there's a need, we can always.
Same time next year, what we're doing now, next year.
Yeah, like Lindsey Graham said, oh, no, never mind.
I would be very satisfied with, I think that's responsible budgeting, and I think that's taking care of our fleet in a responsible manner. And if I needed 3, I would sit here and tell you I need 3.
I just don't like to have a possibility of not getting a car next year. I just don't like the idea of, if we get to the point next year where at this time, and we
Revenues are down.
we can't do it, then we're gonna have an open year, and that's just gonna be one of those things that's gonna come back and bite us.
So you're saying leave one in for next year?
Yeah.
Let's start there.
I disagree somewhat. The man just told us he asked for 3, 2 got submitted to us. He's good with 2, he's getting us 2.
1 got submitted to you.
That wants to be.
Okay, well, you're getting 2. You're getting 2. You're getting it out of this year's budget. And I agree, if your revenues are there next year, and you're blowing it out of the water again, the money's gonna be there for that 3rd car.
For us to make.
I would rather not put us in a situation where that $30,000 is getting utilized out of the budget. You just heard Public Health tell you that her numbers, potentially, we could be seeing millions of dollars in losses of revenue. I mean, $30,000 is not a great deal of money, but it's still $30,000.
Yeah, every bit helps, everybody helps.
Mr. Chairman.
Let's look at this.
Yeah, I think what I was trying to do here, and I'm sure when you were here as a supervisor, you've experienced some of these things, but the revenues being generated there really are based on, they really come from the initiative of the sheriff, something that I'm very proud of, and something that I felt was lacking in the past, and certainly we've been victimized by. And I'm going to repeat, when things go sideways and we get the bill, there's not too much we can do about it. So I want to commend the sheriff for the job that he's doing, and I want to support his efforts. And that's what I was doing. I was trying to recognize that initiative.
As do I. I applaud our sheriff. I think he's done a tremendous job. But our job is to keep an eye on the whole picture. Sheriff takes care of his department. We got the other department heads. Our job, we're looking at the whole thing. And as far as I'm concerned, he's getting 2 cars, potentially a 3rd one next year, maybe even 2 next year if his budget is good enough and we don't realize the catastrophe that the state's.
Well, I'm not sure how necessary that lecture was. I'm aware of what our job is.
Right.
I certainly am aware. But I'm also aware, and I know what it's like to be a department head too, from a different life. And no one asks for these things for their own use or to think that, or just to make life easier for them. They're based on need, and especially, I would speak for the sheriff and say that he understands what the county is up against and still can demonstrate the need and the revenues to support it.
Saw some other hands. Legislator Patel?
I think we're all on the same page about that it makes sense, and I think we have time. If you submit your request for the next committee meeting, we can delve into it further at that time, whether it's 2 cars, 3 cars, 2 cars this year, 1 car next year.
Put the resolution through for 2 cars this year off of this. All right, so I guess I'm going to go around the room. Include one in next year's budget or no?
Yes.
I agree that I think we should continue to purchase vehicles in a responsible way. And as maybe an incentive, and I'm not saying that you need an incentive because you guys are doing a great job, but maybe eliminate that vehicle and come back next year like we are right now and say, hey,
Do it then.
you're,
Okay.
you're
Okay.
75% over in revenue.
All right, well, we'll,
Yeah.
okay, so include, disinclude,
Include.
we're all tied.
Cars this year, right?
Yeah,
And only next year, but
all right, 1 the next year, all right, 3 to 2 include. Include for next year?
No, I'm doing that.
No, the third car. We're not,
Okay.
yes,
I say we take $35,000 out of next year's budget, spend the money this year, and if there's a need to do it, we can fulfill the needs for that car many different ways next year.
Mr. Chairman, just one question for the sheriff. Is there a vehicle replacement plan? Like, I know with larger apparatus, you might be on a 10-year plan or a 5-year plan, whatever.
There really is not a specific plan. The plan is we look at the mileage and the shape and the maintenance records through DPW mechanics, because each year could be different with the amount of miles we put on the vehicle. So really, it's advice from Eric's mechanics, head mechanic Rick, combined with the mileage. Those are the two things. And a little bit of cosmetic, how's it look? Like, I don't like to have an image in the public that we're driving, rust boxes that are pulling up and making all kinds of noises. So I think those three things combined, but no specific every 4 years or every 3 years or a certain. I would love to get to a point where when we reach 200,000 miles, that vehicle goes no matter what. But I don't think the county is in that type of financial shape to just carte blanche do that.
all right, well, based on our straw poll, we had 5 include the car for next year's budget and 3 wait till next year, so,
We can discuss it again.
yeah. So I would say, unless, somebody can do it this way too, okay, which we're gonna do later.
The only question I have for clarification before I send the email to Cheryl is the revenue for the jail. Do you want me to keep it consistent with what it is now, or do you want me to put a modest increase in there? What's the thought
For next year?
for next year's budget?
Do this sheet. So send an email so someone can do this sheet, whatever you want.
I'd like to see a modest increase
To what was budgeted last year, or to
This year.
like 500?
this year.
Or this year, I'm sorry.
So from 450 to 300, 500?
So it would either be 475 or 500, right?
What do we got? 475 to, oh no,
It was 475 this year.
I know,
This
but,
year's budget.
yes, but the recommended for this 21 was 450.
450, correct.
So, well, we can make that amendment. Somebody can make that amendment here. That's not his call, right? If somebody wants to put it through on their sheet, which we're gonna do.
Yes,
we'll do it.
But if
put it
he,
through on my sheet.
but if he emails all that information to Cheryl or someone, or any one of us can put it on the sheet and take care of it.
But that, what he's emailing Cheryl is a resolution to go to this month's meeting to get 2
Yeah.
cars out of this year's revenue. So what we're talking about here is, do we want him to increase?
So it's just gonna be an amendment, not
Yeah.
a resolution.
Yeah,
But I thought he was gonna send the other information he was talking about previously, so that we could make a change.
was there something else
Yeah,
you
there's a
wanted to
couple
offset that 50,000 with elsewhere?
Well, yeah, there was a couple lines that I would ask for 5,000 increase, and I was gonna decrease the
Well,
overtime
then-
line by 15.
Send that to Cheryl, and we'll include it on one of our sheets, like legislator Headwell said. So jacket 50 to 500, and with your offsetting entries elsewhere.
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right, any other questions for the sheriff? And the undersheriff? Hearing none, thank you, gentlemen, both, for making yourselves available.
Thank you.
Thank you for what you do.
Eric, as his name's going on, it's kind of rough.
Did you tell your friends to put him in? Yeah.
Something you know about me, Bob, I'm not scared.
Eric,
I'm asking for 12.
Bulldozer.
There's dump truck, let's go.
How many federal inmates you got coming?
Listen, I brought you, a repair bill for one of my oldest dump trucks in the fleet that over the past 2 years probably make you sick. But
right, we have the Commissioner of DPW before us, Mr. Eric Mead. Eric, welcome and thank you for being here. When we first started talking tonight, I just want to let you know, when you were waiting to come in the building, we did do a synoptic review of your budget with the treasurer and the executive Thursday night. And we can see that there's, between your three line items here, between the general, the county road, and the road machinery funds, you got a net increase of about $105,000. We do realize that a lot of what caused the decrease in the road machinery fund was a shifting of personnel expenses up to the general fund and vice versa. And we also realize that what into your $169,000 increase in the county road fund was $46,000 snow contract increase and a $97,000 increase in health insurance. So, we have a decent idea of what are the major contributors to your year-over-year changes in budget. And the floor is yours to give us further insight into your budget.
All right. Well, good evening, everyone. Thanks for having me here. As far as with any increases into my A fund, I think the only place we really did any moderate increases was that I requested was under for building repair services, things like that, heating, gas, electric. I did have as we don't need to keep beating a dead horse, a huge increase in water bills here just recently for public safety facilities. So I had shown that increase in this year's budget. I had a little increase for natural gas, light power things for the new building that we just purchased in Amsterdam for DSS. And, not knowing where things are going to go on a year-to-year basis, it's kind of, as I said with my finance director, let's just go with an overall 5-year average and, and hopefully we can hit those numbers. We have been, I guess, good on to them where we've been able to transfer out of that, but we've also lowered them over the past couple of years through some of the lines. We reduced them last year through our negotiations. I did just recently, though, under, I don't know how you guys want me to jump around here, but I just had to sign a new contract for next year, not a contract, but a service agreement with Milton Cat Generators, because we had a serious issue with the generators up to the public safety facility. And it's been 5 years since these generators have been put under a major test load. So I just signed a contract to have that done in January, maintenance contract, along when they do the service of the generators. The reason that wasn't done in 4 years is I had a mechanic in the garage who was diesel tech certified who could do it, save the county money. He's no longer employed in Montgomery County. I don't need Jeff calling me at 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock at night threatening me that the generator's down. So we want to make sure that they stay serviced. Maintenance contracts, $224,000. I have a list of every company that we hold contract with, and that's the number. Like I said, but the Milton Cat generator is going to increase because of that load test that's just happened today. But I think I'm okay in my budget under other building maintenance work to fit that in, and that's why I did it for today to get locked in because the price expired end of this month. I don't think I really had any changes to anything other than that as far as custodial, other supplies, construction maintenance supplies. We did, as you mentioned, with the bike trail, we eliminated part-time labor for the bike trail for next year. Left our construction maintenance supplies, gates, trailhead maintenance, lumber, the same. Small tools. We did leave in for asbestos handling. We do have some down to the Benton Road that we may have to mediate in the building, and if we do, we will do that in-house with our own forces. So it's a good thing to have that license on hand if we can do it. We did have to pay for or we will have to pay for the study because CP just completed their survey and they will be providing the county with what's in the building. I got an email and it's the major things to expect: pipe wrap, ductwork wrap, nothing that can't be encapsulated big that can stay in the building and not have a huge expense. So that's A fund. Stop there, Mr. Legislator.
Yeah, I mean, if anybody has, let's look at the A fund first. Any other questions on that? Those, of course, are on pages 11 and 12. Legislative Pell.
We have an increase in the recreation bike path from $7,000 a year to $60,000.
For in the bike path line
Special, 7180.
under labor.
It's on the recreation facility maintenance bike path. Page 12. Line 290.
I have 290 on my sheet. I printed off from that.
So, here,
Is it labor?
April.
7180.
So it's personal forces. We moved some of our labor from personal forces over to that line to cover the payroll.
Oh, okay.
So the deduction that you would see under our regular employee line went into that line because we're not going to hire.
Your shift.
So, right, so we're shifting, so.
Very good, thank you.
Any other questions on DPWA fund?
Is there anything that we can shift to this year? Do you have funds to shift anything out of next year's budget into this year?
I don't, I'm pretty tight, I think, with what I've got. I was going through my numbers today, what I've had expended to date. There's no equipment money left over. I still have some things that I have to secure for the jail. UPS batteries and things like that we purchased for up there. I wish I was a revenue maker for the county. Trust me, I don't. It'd be a lot easier.
Thank you.
I got a question. Eric, did you have any money budgeted for those structural walls on your garage?
No, sir.
Wow. I really think that we should, I walked that with Eric a while back.
You've got something even better coming your way.
It just got worse last week when the storm picked up, and I don't know if it was a mini tornado or micro burst that took trees down and crushed a vehicle in the parking lot across the road, but we had wind come through the old vents of the garage and blow parts of the ceiling.
I mean, structurally, I don't think the building would fall down, but safety-wise and security-wise, I mean, those walls are really crumbling, you know?
Yeah, the building's in rough shape.
We're gonna have to do some upgrades on that.
We're building new.
Or build a new one. You just got the new bids in, so that'll be another topic of discussion at another
On either
time.
account, it's in pretty bad shape.
Mhm.
All set, Legislator Wilson? Okay. All right, Eric, why don't we move on to the county road and road machinery funds, starting on page 47 through 49. If there's no other questions on the A fund.
Okay, so negotiate appropriations for employees. Obviously, that's all within CSEA or budgeted outside of my control. Clothing, uniforms, the same. We did just hire a new company, Cintas, so we think we've got a good number on exactly where we'll be per year for them, food allowances, things. Highway administration, office equipment, supplies, things like that. We left all the same because it runs pretty close on a yearly basis. Or 47, like I said, we have everything under engineering, we no longer have in the department currently.
I mean, really, the two main things that have contributed to, you know, increase there are the snow contracts
Correct.
and, the fringes, you know, the salary.
Mm-hmm.
Eric, why such an increase in road striping?
The reason I request more in the road striping is every year that when you stripe a road, once you stripe it, you always have to stripe it. And if you go a year without striping it, or 2 years, or what if we pave the road, it needs to be striped. But it's a yearly process. And the amount of, how do I say it? Older residents in the county who drive through certain towns and see their roads striped, and this time of year more than ever, when there's fog in the morning, and they don't have that fog line or that yellow line to go off of, our phone in the office rings, you know, a lot. So we try to, our stripers are currently coming back in again. We're scheduled for next week to come in and restripe, or end of this week. I'd have to check with Dave, he set up the appointment, to pave, or to restripe the roads that we've just paved and to catch what they did, because they do it in 2 cycles, early spring and then later this time.
Legislator Sweet?
Thanks, Eric, for coming. Under construction and maintenance supplies, it's 5110-448. You requested 1.3 million. The executive knocked it down about 500,000. What, did you have a reason that you wanted to increase that line?
Legislator Sweet, I requested 1.3 as well last year. And it was put down to 800,000, and I know the county executive I've talked about before, and with the CHIPS allocation, is where he hopes to make up for that. I also had concerns as far as how much CHIPS money I'm gonna have next year, with the discussion of reduction, so, that's why, you know, I went with that request again as 1.3, because of some projects that I have that I've got on my docket for next year.
Okay, is it year to date, well, year to end September, you're at about 530,000.
Right, and I just finished CHIPS projects 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago. So for the rest of this year now, we're on the maintenance money. I try to April 1st, no use of local maintenance money. I go all CHIPS 1st of April, and then weather providing, and then this time of year will be all local maintenance.
Okay, thank you, Chair.
Legislator Patel?
On the revenues of sales scrap excess material, we budgeted $7,000. See actual in 2019 with almost $13,000. You know, scrap can mean a lot of things, whether it's retired trucks or backhoes or things like that. Do we see that we're going to be, you know, we had talked in the past about the grade all replaced it. You have one that needs work and possible, would that be under that line? Is that where that's going to show up?
A lot of that scrap comes from culverts that we take out in the road, steel culverts, which, as we replace everything now with plastic, that's going to start to go away over the years. I filled several truckloads of brake rotors.
So it's not including any of the auction?
No, sir.
Where does the auction show up?
So, as I even have a resolution up for next year, the auction money, I put in a resolution to have it put right back into my appropriation. I don't know where Sean shows it as a revenue.
It's going to be up under sale of equipment.
Thank you.
Any other questions on the county road fund? All right, Eric, how about the road machinery?
Road machinery.
Again, just a shift of phrases here, if it is, right?
Yep. And I requested 75,000 this year for the replacement of 3 light-duty vehicles for DPW. And again, everything under natural gas property rent lease repair, that's all these numbers are for the DPW facility. Most of them. Well, pretty much all of them.
Where did the under?
Yes, sir.
So going back to my question, sales of equipment, we've got 0. Do we anticipate selling any equipment this year?
I don't put anything in there because if there's not a capital project spending, planned to pass, then I can't replace anything. So if I can't replace anything, I can't afford to sell anything because I've got 2 trucks down right now. I have 2 gray dolls down right now. So yeah, we own 4. 2 are operational. 2 are in the garage. I have 1 dump truck that is tagged out of service. The kingpins are gone, the box is rotted, the frame is cracked. It's a 2007 truck. They take a lot of abuse. So I couldn't afford to replace that this year. So I had 1 dump truck in the last 2 years. The same truck. It's a 2007. Last year we put 45,000 in the truck. This year we put 20,000. Now it came just over $64,000 in the past 2 years. To a 13-year-old truck that we paid $120 for brand new. So sorry to go the wrong way around answering your question,
I
but
guess
no,
my
I'm
point is
not
we're
going to.
going to have some auction of something.
I'm sorry?
We'll probably auction something, have some auction stuff this year.
We didn't bond anything this year for equipment.
Yeah, we didn't bond anything in
We didn't bond
2020.
anything, so we're not gonna do it.
Well, if we have 2 Grados that aren't working, and one of them we had talked about in the past about, there was a possibility. So there is some possibility of something.
Yeah, I mean, if we do replace two vehicles, light duty vehicles even, then there would be 2 light duty vehicles that leave. And the value of those would probably net $2,500, $3,000 at auction if we were lucky.
You won't auction off the shot gray dolls, will you? What would you do with them? If they're shot and they're not scrap and they're not auctioned, what happens?
Yeah, you get, a lot of times what happens, other local towns who can't afford a $450,000 machine and can't bond, or see with that kind of expense of having, they only have 30 miles of road, look to the county to purchase a used machine. But it would go either to a local town or through an auction company that other towns all across the state.
And they'd have to fix it.
Oh, yeah, it's all.
Yeah.
But but the county also has to disclose any issues that are wrong with it. We can't. Which we do with the auctioneers.
Let's see.
Whatever happened, was it last year, year before, was it Hertz or Rent-A-Car or one of those, they were gonna come in and give us a whole grand scheme? Whatever happened to that?
So they presented everything to us, and I took the program that they put together and pretty much went through everything, every vehicle as they had it, and realized that the program that I put together for replacement, the county was saving money over what they were doing. Because on the back end, when they take the cars back and they sell, that's where they make their money.
Mm-hmm.
Where when we buy them and we run them for 3 years and we turn around and do that, the value of that vehicle goes back into the next vehicle that we buy. Why should they get it when we can keep it here in the county? And so and it's basically the same program I've done in the town of Florida over the past.
So you're implementing that plan instead of hiring someone?
Yes, and that's why, where we're at right now. So currently we have 3 trucks left in the fleet to be updated. The box truck and 2 pickup trucks. To get to that point of a trade-in. So next year we would implement trading in trucks that I just purchased in 17. And that number could come down and you could probably roll 2-3 trucks a year. Light duty vehicles. I don't have the expense that Jeff has because he has to outfit his with all his cages and whatever else he has to do. But so that's where I'm able to purchase a vehicle a lot cheaper and on state contract, state bid, average F-350 pickup truck that we run around here with a plow on it. It costs the county $23,000. We outfit it with a plow. You run that truck for 2-3 years, at auction, we're getting $19,000 for that truck easily, because it was a $48,000 truck for you or I to buy it off the lot, and it works. being the town of Florida, I haven't paid for a pickup truck, for the actual truck, 7 years. At least.
All right, any other questions for Commissioner Mead on the DPW budget? Hearing and seeing none. Eric, thank you so much for all your hard work, the department's hard work. I know we celebrated them a couple of weeks ago, or you did, and I happened to show up for a little while. They worked very hard this year while everybody was home during the pandemic, and I think you did a great thing in rewarding them with a nice lunch. So thanks for all your hard work, and please pass on that to your staff.
We'll do, Legislator Peck, thank you very much, and I appreciate you showing up. Everybody have a good evening. Thank you.
You're in the bullpen, huh? And one of them left, I don't know.
Check the pine tar on the back.
You're waiting in the hall or somewhere. Social services was waiting in the hall. Welcome.
Good evening.
Last but certainly not least is our social services team, consisting of our Commissioner, Mike McMahon, our Deputy Commissioner of Finance, Jessica Bates, and our Deputy Commissioner of Social Services, Tom Lippy. Thank you all for being here tonight. As we mentioned to the other participants, we did review your budget with the treasurer and the executive on Thursday, kind of a 1,000-foot overview look, and see that year over year, unlike we've seen in many years, that it's coming in for less than it did the previous year. And, we do have some input into that, that they synopsized for us, attributable to reduced expenditures in Medicaid, family assistance, child care, and raise the age, with corresponding reductions in revenues for those programs and administrations. But that said, this is your opportunity to give us further insight into your budget and certainly discuss any angle of it with us that you'd like. And some legislators will probably have some questions for you as we move through. So the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair. Is it okay to make an opening statement?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
You're on.
So I'd like to first start off with we've had good conversations and meeting with the county executive and the treasurer. I think got us to this place where we are. I had the pleasure of working with a very dedicated, professional, and capable team of unsung heroes who have performed with excellence since the beginning of this pandemic. Day in and day out, our DSS team meets the daily challenges of helping those in need and those that require assistance to get back on their feet. Our communities are stronger as a result of their hard work. So looking towards 2021, just some assumptions and some anticipations. With an anticipated drop in revenue and the rising cost of social services due to the disarray created by the economic fallout of COVID-19, like spikes in SNAP applications, Medicaid cases, safety net cases, and heat cases. How much will public assistance caseloads increase once COVID-19 stimulus funds are available? Will the temporary hold, and temporary, I got it in quotes, will the temporary hold withhold of 20% of state aid become permanent? Will New York State maintain its current Medicaid financing structure? Medicaid is not a cost center that we can control. While New York State has capped the Medicaid liability in recent years and seeing the growth, we still need to carefully watch for state fiscal actions that could negatively impact the long-term county cost of this program, especially at a time when the state may look to relieve some of the fiscal pressure through additional and new cost shifts of mandates. Other major mandated costs include temporary assistance, TANF and safety net, child welfare, youth detention, and foster care. What will be the fiscal impact of Family First Prevention Act, or Family First as it's known? Changes for the federal Title 40 foster care. This is scheduled to go into effect on October 1st of 2021. The good news is that the New York State Department of Health has calculated an increased federal share and a lower local share for Medicaid under the ACA. I think Jess will explain that in detail, the Medicaid local share. Not so great news, decreased state participation in cost, reduced foster care block grant and those kind of allocations, ongoing low-income housing prices exacerbated by COVID-19, and a public assistance caseload shift from family assistance to safety net. So that's the assumptions and what we see coming forward. We think, I saw this, heard this in your first meeting, maybe a mid-year review, a budget review, after we see the state budget will probably make really good sense, especially for our budget. There would be a lot of unmet needs for caseloads now, because the stimulus money obviously has kept a lot of people afloat. When that comes to an end, I think we're worried about the increase of services, of applicants because of evictions, which will probably take place, and as well as people who are losing their jobs, as a result of the ongoing COVID after the pandemic. So, there are the assumptions we made, and we're ready to take
Commissioner, I will say that, discussing last Thursday with the executive and treasurer, we are prepared to be able to make an adjustment on the fly to your budget next year, in the event those cuts, manifest around state budget settlement time. So rest assured that we're aware of that. Okay, I'm sorry. We'll continue. Whoever wants to speak next.
Yes, do you want to pick up anything?
Open question.
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely, open question.
All right, sure. Let's look it up.
Under revenues, line 3643, or account 3643, raised the age. You budgeted 0 and the executive budget has 297,000. What's the cause of that?
That was actually a mistake on my part. I was under the impression that the raise the age was no longer going to be funded for this year. They are still continuing to fund it 100%. So that was actually
Good, thank you.
Let's start sweet.
My big concern, I guess, and probably we discussed this last Thursday, is the total overall revenues. Year to date, well, the adopted budget was 15.6, it was amended to 16.1. Year to date, well, year to end of September anyway, you're at 6.6 million, leaving about 9.5 million, which I understand there's a lag and things of that nature. Just to go on a little bit of a history tour here, I printed out the general fund from 2011 through the current date. In 2011, the unrealized amount at the end of the year was about 600, a little over 600,000. In 2012, it was about 500,000. In 2013, it was actually realized about $500,000 more than was budgeted. 2014, it was down. We were lacking about 850,000, and then it took a turn. In 2015, it went to 2.2 unrealized million. 2016, almost $1 million unrealized. 2017, 3.1. 2018, 2.6. And 2019, 5.2 million unrealized. And I realize these numbers, we do realize some of this stuff, but when do the numbers catch up? And where does that, like in the last year, the 5.2 million, where do we realize and where do we see that in the budget? Is it in the DSS budget, or does it go into the general fund?
So I would say over the course of the years, the difference that you would see between those is really the difference between the appropriations and the revenues. If you don't fully spend the appropriated line, then the revenues you have budgeted that are attributable to that are not going to be fully realized. So unfortunately, I can't go back to what happened. What I looked at when I did my budget was 2016, 17, last 5 years. Prior to that, I don't know why they were much more spot on. It is something that when I looked at my budget this time, I did year over year for what the last 5 years were and what we might actually expect in revenues and what we might actually spend, which is why you see that decrease in not only our appropriations, but what our revenues are so that it's more realistic.
Is there a way that we could see the number of unrealized revenue compared to the unused appropriation so that we can kind of have an idea of, we didn't realize in 2019, we didn't realize 5.2 million. What were the revenue, or what were the appropriations that we didn't? Right. So is there
Sean would have to run that report.
I'm just curious to see what the actual number is of, if we didn't realize 5 million, did we not spend 300 or 3 million? And
I think the complicated part of it is oftentimes these revenues that are coming in are spread out over a host of lines, so there's not a clear, okay, it's this line, let's have Sean run it. And that's what we've been trying to, sort of unravel, so to speak, and that's what makes it complicated. I think what you're saying is a great idea. We can try to take a crack at it. It's just not going to be as simple as A to B, A to B, A to B. But we can certainly,
So is there any idea of what the big turn was in 2015 when it went from, at the most, 850,000 to 2.2 million? And was there a difference in the way the state and feds were giving us the revenues, or? Because it seems like that's a big jump.
Yeah. There are a number of big unexplained jumps over the last 5 years that we're still trying to put our finger on. And I'm not going to sit here and pretend that I have the answer to that question. I'm going to be completely honest.
I would just be kind of curious. I mean, I know it's going to be hard to pinpoint it, but
But it's a worthwhile task, and one that we've been trying to, asking those questions ourselves, and with Jess being her first budget, these have been a lot of the questions that we've been asking. We had more meetings with DSS on these topics than any other department, and are just going to try to keep working through. Because then that way, it's just not DSS with the institutional now, it's also Sean and I are picking it up as we go every year, and we're talking about some of those big differences in some of our meetings. Absolutely.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Anybody else, any questions? I think you're good.
There's some value being lost.
Yeah, I guess there is. Yes.
Well, thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for making yourselves available. Keep up the good work, and we know that you're directly affected by this pandemic and the services you deliver and your whole clientele, and on top of what you ordinarily do. So thank you very much. And please thank your staff.
Absolutely.
All right, hearing that, there's one other topic of discussion, just so you know, and you know the drill. These are the sheets where we get to make recommended budget changes based on our conversations or our desires. They have to be submitted to Cheryl by Monday, the 19th, so that we can do straw votes on them next Thursday. Next Thursday, the 22nd, we have our first public hearing on the budget, and then we will do the straw votes on all the line items that legislators are recommending changes on. Other than that, we have a committee meeting, we have our committee meetings next Tuesday, but that's just the normal course of business, so. Unless there's anything else, anybody else would like to bring up this evening to discuss? Thank you all for your time and your introspective questions. We've had some good dialogue tonight and some, peel back the onion a little bit on some of these departments, and appreciate all the time you all put into it. Thank you. Motion to adjourn. Legislator Thayer, Legislator Hadwell. Thank you.